the government. Unfortunately for too many, this is the reality. In more than 70 countries, same-sex relationships are illegal. In 9, the penalty is death. People are suffering and being persecuted each and every day because society has implemented a theory of heteronormativity that is plaguing our culture. Now, I'm not here today to discuss gay marriage or religion. I'm here to discuss love and humanity, things that are important to each and every one of us. I want to accomplish this by first talking about the problems the LGBT community faces in their everyday lives, then the causes of these problems, and finally get to some solutions for how to fix our superiority complex. Before we can further discuss the problem at hand, we must first understand why it is an important issue. According to an April 2011 study by Gary Gates of the UCLA Williams Institute, an estimated 3.5% of American adults identify as lesbian, gay, or transgender, implying that there are approximately 9 million LGBT Americans, a figure roughly equivalent to the population of New Jersey. 9 million. On top of the million in the international and youth LGBT communities that are facing hardships that no one should have to face, especially in the so-called land of the free. LGBT children and adolescents are the targets of frequent bullying. According to the Human Rights Campaign, LGBT youth are 2 times more likely to be physically abused by their peers than non-LGBT students. Others are sometimes kicked out of their own homes or driven as far as suicide. According to a 2009 report by the National Coalition for the Homeless, an estimated 20% of homeless youth are LGBT. And out of that 20%, exists a 62% suicide rate. LGBT adults suffer problems far beyond the realm of the gay marriage debate. While restrictions vary from state to state, LGBT couples often face challenges in adopting children or obtaining legal custody over those they have raised since birth. Others are sometimes denied health care or insurance. Until recently, hospitals often denied visitation rights to partners and non-biological children of their LGBT patients. Among those to suffer was Janice Langman, who along with her 3 adopted children were denied access to her partner of 18 years, Lisa Pond, when she was hospitalized in Miami. According to Devin Dwyer in the 2011 report on ABC News, Pond suffered an aneurysm on a cruise and later died in a hospital without ever being able to say goodbye to her partner or her children. People are clearly suffering, but before we can solve these problems, we must first understand why they are happening in the first place. Society has developed a tradition of heteronormativity, described by Drs. Jacqueline Hudak and Sean Giametti in their article in Psychology Today as viewing heterosexuality as the default position, a position of dominance and superiority. Heteronormativity often leads to heterosexism, defined by Perles and his colleagues in their 2006 article in the Journal of Family Therapy as the system by which heterosexuality is assumed to be the only acceptable and viable life option, and hence to be superior, natural, and dominant. Superiority and dominance are at the root of the problem, but why do they even exist in the first place? First, Hudak and Giametti cite the limited language used to describe homosexuality in our culture that describes an inaccurate representation of the actual lived experiences of people. Our language limits this and forces us to incorrectly describe homosexuality as separate and consequently worse. Second, religion plays a key role as people are often divided on how to interpret homosexuality on the basis of religious texts and traditions. The final theory is proposed by Michael Foucault in his book, The History of Sexuality, in which he describes that homosexuality is viewed as contrary to nature and is therefore condemned, despite the fact that large amounts of research have been conducted in the past 25 years, beginning with Simon LeVay's groundbreaking 1991 study, in which he discovered significant size differences in the hypothalamus in the brain between heterosexual and homosexual men. Now, with the problem it causes in mind, we can now ask what we can do to make America and the world a better place for all of its citizens. The first solution involves ourselves. We must change our own attitudes, opinions, and actions before society as a whole may improve. For some, this may involve, as Macklemore would put it, stop using the term gay as synonymous with the lesser. For others, it may mean simply demonstrating greater respect for your LGBT peers. Further action could include participation in pride events, donating to groups such as the Human Rights Campaign, or avoiding companies and organizations that discriminate on the basis of sexuality. Most importantly, however, you must educate yourself and those around you. A large amount of heterosexism is based on ignorance and misinformation, and simply learning about the LGBT community would combat a large amount of this. It is up to our generation to eliminate heterosexism, change the heteronormative, and better society for all of its members. Thankfully, society is headed in the right direction. 17 states have legalized same-sex marriage. New legislation bars hospitals from denying visitation rights to partners. And the overall number of accepting Americans is steadily increasing. But, as reported in 2011 by the United Nations, 76 countries retain laws used to criminalize on the basis of sexuality. They say all is fair in love and war. But until each one of those 76 countries adopts ideals of acceptance, humanity remains entrenched in a war on love. Last time I checked, there is nothing wrong with my best friend and her girlfriend, or my childhood friend and her two moms. We are all real people, with real likes, dislikes, aspirations, and relationships. And let's face it doesn't matter whether Prince or Princess Charming rescues you from your castle, as long as you are happy with your